Welcome to Define Your Path with DocV, bringing you real talk with global thought leaders to inspire hearts and minds for sustainable breakthroughs and profitability for your life and business. Here's your host, DocV.
Hi, I'm Dr. Virginia LeBlanc, also known as DocV, the Pivot Maestro. Welcome to the Define Your Path podcast for those seeking to define their own path into purposed entrepreneurship. This is a show about transforming perspectives, as well as inspiring and motivating you to think without a box by exposing you to global thought leaders like my guest today, change agents and legacy builders across industries on how they successfully define their path in life and business to profitability and sustainable wins. At Defining Paths, we operate in truth, transparency, and love to help you navigate the waters of your life and put you back in business. And Define Your Path podcast is no different. It all starts in the mind. Will you be the captain or the crew is the question. Today's spotlight is with a dear friend. She has become such a dear friend to me and just a wonderful kindred spirit, Janelle Anderson. I am so happy to have her with us today. So let me tell you a little bit about Janelle. Janelle Anderson is an author, certified professional coach, and renowned speaker who is on a mission to empower women of all backgrounds to embrace their greatness and know their true value. Having overcome a past of sexual trauma, Janelle is dedicated to challenging and encouraging her listeners to find their untapped potential and become the stars of their own stories. She's also the host of the weekly podcast, Women Emerging Fearlessly, so check her out. On this podcast, she helps female entrepreneurs learn to show up, stand up, and speak up. My kind of woman, in fearless confidence. Janelle draws on her faith as a boundless source of inspiration and strength in her life. And she credits God with helping her get through her darkest moments and emerge as a stronger, happier, and more confident person. Janelle, my sister, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be on your show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so happy we were able to make this happen. I know you're very busy, and we just look forward to hearing your story and how you faced your fears to love the skin you're in and pivot into pursuing your passion and your soul purpose. So in this podcast, we like to keep it simple, and we ask you two questions and we flow between those two questions. How have you defined your path? And how do you help others define theirs? So the spotlight is yours.
Nice. I like those two questions. So I love how you said, how did I get to where I am able to love the skin I'm in? Mm-hmm. Because that was a question posed to me in one of my quiet times, God speaking in my spirit. And he said, it's time for you to be at home in your own skin.
Wow.
Yeah. And this was really not that long ago, probably within the last decade or so. I was probably late 50s, early 60s. And I was really searching for what's next. What is my purpose now? The time has gone by so fast. Oh my gosh, where did 50 some years go? And what am I doing? That kind of season of life. And I had been really searching the answers for those questions. And as I searched, the Lord began to show me that in order for me to fulfill my passion, my purpose, to be everything He'd created me to be in this world, I had to go back to some past trauma that I had never processed. I needed to open that door and bring all that stuff out that I had hidden away.
Yes.
And look at it. And I did not want to. Yeah, I'm like, really? Do I have to? Do I really have to do that? And he said, it's time for you to be at home in your own skin.
Yes.
And in order to do that, you have to be united and be whole. I had been fragmented. I had tried to separate the present me from this long ago past me that I felt shame about, Yes. And I had just tried to disconnect from her as if she didn't ever exist. And that's just not possible to do without it affecting you.
Right.
And so as I began this process, he began to just show me so much about how that had impacted me for 30 some years. Didn't realize that it had. I thought, I was living a pretty normal life, but as he began to show me, I saw all the places where I was not defining my path. I was not walking full out, speaking up, showing up, as me. I had been trying to be someone else. I had been trying to hide this past. And so if people asked me for my story, well, I couldn't tell them. So I had to just tell them a little bit, make something up. And I wasn't connected to me. I was not whole. And so I began a journey of unpacking that with some help, and began to look at all the stuff that had happened and look at it in a new way. So when I was 19, I was in college, went out with my girlfriend one night. I was still a virgin because I had planned on being a virgin when I got married. I was a good Catholic girl. I had been raised, and we went out one night and we were, just hanging out and talking to some guys. And then I don't remember anything else except waking up in my bed in my apartment with this man on top of me. And I was very fuzzy headed. Like I couldn't figure out what was going on. And it was just for, I guess, a few seconds, and I blacked out again. And then when I came to in the morning, I looked down at my sheets and I saw blood, and I realized. And the thought that came to me was, I just lost my virginity in a one-night stand with some guy I don't know. What is wrong with me that I would let this happen? I must just be worthless, a piece of trash. That was the story I told myself, 19-year-old. And I didn't talk to anyone about it. I never thought about talking about it. The last thing I wanted to do was tell somebody because I was ashamed of me. It did not occur to me that I had been drugged or even raped. Not until 30 years later. And that came out in one of these sessions when I was, getting some help. And I was describing that night. It was the night I lost my virginity. That's how I called it, That's what I called it. She said, sounds like you were drugged and raped.
Wow.
And I was like, what? It was like a shock 30 some years later. And so I was able to then start taking that apart and looking at it and realizing what had actually happened instead of the story I had told myself. But the sad thing was that put me on this path after it happened, of just desperately searching for love, desperately searching for someone to love me and to validate that I was worthy of love, which is very common with sexual assault victims.
I can relate.
And of course, I didn't know I was a sexual assault victim. I didn't know I was in a trauma state. Something happened and I was feeling this. So anyway, I got into one relationship after another that just kind of piled on more and more shame. And long story, but 4 years later, I found myself sitting on a bar stool in a Las Vegas casino, 23 years old, all dressed up, makeup, hair, beautiful outfit, listening to the slot machines behind me, people talking, music playing. But inside, I was just like, I want to leave. I want to run out of here as fast as I can. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do what I'm about to do. But I look at the door out of the casino and there's my boyfriend watching me. And I knew I couldn't get out of there. I had to follow through with his plan. And soon a man comes and sits next to me and asks me, are you working? And everything inside of me is screaming, no, don't do it. But I said yes. And that began my first day of 3 years of being trafficked by my boyfriend. And so hundreds of men later, 3 years later, hundreds of men, hundreds of bar stools. It's like I was a shell of a woman by the time I was 26. I was completely shut down. Every one of these encounters, I had disassociated and gone somewhere else in my mind. So I wasn't present. The shame load was huge. I felt so worthless. I felt trapped. This was my life. How did I even get here? But this is my life. I can't teach school. How could I ever teach school? Which was my dream. When I've been a prostitute, how how can I live a normal life? This is it. This is my lot in life. That's what I believed until one glorious night when we got in this horrible argument. I don't even remember what it was about, but he became violent. He wasn't usually physically violent. He was very emotionally and mentally manipulative, but not physically. But that night, he had me on the floor. He was choking me. I started to pass out. I thought I saw evil in his eyes, like something else had taken over. And I thought I could possibly die. I mean, I was terrified. But somehow he came to his senses and he stopped and he ran out of the room. Out of the apartment. And so immediately I called my mom, even though it was the middle of the night. And she was in Virginia. We were in Las Vegas. But just desperate for someone to help me, And I know I was sobbing. I was hysterical. I had just thought I was going to die. And my mom, bless her heart, she did not know that I was living this kind of life. And I don't even know what she thought. I mean, can you imagine your daughter calling you in that state in the middle of the night, miles away? Anyway, I'll never forget what she said, though. She said, honey, I just think that Jesus wants you to come home to him and have peace. And those two words, home and peace, that's all I knew. That's all I heard. It was like water to dry ground. It was like a magnet to my soul. Like, I want that. I want more than anything to feel safe and be at home again and be at peace. And so she asked me if I'd pray with her. And I said, yes. She told me later she couldn't believe that I agreed to pray with her because I was pretty hardened back then. I had a pretty foul mouth. Anyway, I prayed with her, asked the Lord Jesus to come into my heart and the whole prayer, right? Immediately, I felt a presence so real. I physically felt a presence actually enter into my being from top of my head and just fill my being. Immediately, it was like peace, right? Just and strength. And immediately I knew something had changed. I didn't know what happened. In my mind, I couldn't figure that out, but I knew something. And I also knew all of a sudden I had the strength to say, no, I'm not going to go out again. I'm not doing it anymore. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. And I didn't care what he said. It was just amazing because before I couldn't have said no to him. And so sure enough, he came home. I told him, I'm not going out again. I'm not doing it again. He didn't believe me, of course. He tried every trick he had for the next month, but I never did. And I eventually got out of there and got home to Virginia and started living a new life as a Christian, went to church and all of that. But I wasn't healed and whole inside. Like I was forgiven being a Christian, but I didn't process anything. I didn't tell anyone. And I just figured, you know what? If I forget about it, it'll go away. And so that's what I did. And 30 years later, I'm in this place in my 50s, sitting there and God's saying, you know what? It's time for you to be at home in your skin.
Wow.
Yeah. And so once I did all of that work with him, and I began to notice that all of a sudden I was like emerging out of this dark place as me, finally at home in my own skin. Finally seeing the real me and understanding that I was never worthless, that I had actually been traumatized, that I had actually been a victim. I was not some worthless person who just did all these things because I felt like doing them, and I finally was able to forgive myself. And instead of being ashamed of my younger me, I was able to just wrap my arms around myself basically and have compassion and understand. I began to understand what happened. And that enabled me to be confident again and tell my story and speak up and even write about it in my book. And that is why I have this passion. I talk about defining your path. And God showed me, he spoke to me about, you have a path of destiny that I've created for you. But
Yes.
you have the choice to walk in it or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to automatically happen.
Yeah.
You have to make that choice.
Yes.
And the choice for me was to allow him to bring wholeness and healing by doing all that, processing through everything, looking at everything and seeing the truth instead of all the lies. And it wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it would be. I thought it would be really scary and painful.
Girl, I don't even know where to start here. I mean, besides just the goosebumps that keep running up and down my body, just listening to your story. But what is hitting home, one, you just ended with choice, and that was what I was about to go to. I wanted to pull that out and just discuss that a little bit. But how just absolutely strong and amazing you were. There was a source you didn't even know about, and a strength you hadn't even processed that you had to, because, there are some people who are in that situation who might have decided to, you know what, I'm done with this, I'm out, I'm taking myself out of the game of life, but you just, how strong, girl. I tell you, I admire you so much, your strength, your courage, your fortitude, the work you're doing. I want to talk about this word choice that you brought out. And then we can talk about more specifically how you help others define their path. Because I talk a lot about choice being a birthright. It's a birthright that we often neglect. Most of us neglect. And we don't even process it as a birthright,
right?
But then also when we get into understanding that we have the ability to choose and to choose us and define our path, we have to blot out all that noise that's coming at us from every direction from our own minds and other people's opinions. Yeah. Speak to that a little bit more, please.
Yeah. So, wow. Yeah. You just hit on, I think, one of the biggest challenges women have in that other people's opinions. What will others think of me? That's what kept me silent for 30 years. Exactly. What would they think of me? And that does take away your choice, doesn't it? Because if you are hiding your light, if you are diminishing who you are, if you are afraid to tell your story or not being real and vulnerable because you're worried about what other people think of you, you are giving your power of choice away to that other person. They're actually choosing for you in a way, whether they know it or not, because their opinion is dictating to you, your decisions and what you're going to do, how you're going to show up in your life. And when I realized that was a huge, huge revelation for me, because I had always been so concerned about what others would think of me. And did they accept me? And when I didn't feel like they did, I'd feel so horrible about who I was. Even my friends, we'd be sitting around maybe having dinner. And if they cut me off mid-sentence or maybe didn't seem interested in what I had to do, any little thing, I would take that as they don't like me. There's something wrong with me. This happened over and over again. And I would often have people say, "Oh, Janelle, come on, that's not," and then I would feel even worse because I felt like, gosh, nobody understands me. What is wrong with me? It was always this, what is wrong with me?
Yes.
And so when God began to heal me, one of the biggest parts of that was seeing myself the way he saw me and accepting that as the truth. We have this truth and lie thing going on. The enemy is always lying. It's always lying. And when we're worried about what other people think of us, or do they like us, or will they reject us, that is really coming from that lie that somehow you're not good enough. Somehow you're not worthy. And somehow you're not valuable. If somebody else deems that you're not, then you're not. That is such a lie.
It is.
And it was Psalm 139. Man, girl, I was camped out in that song.
It was one of my favorites.
I was there for a long time, digging into everything, every little word. I looked it up, and it was mind blowing. And in that, he said, he showed me so clearly, like a drop from my head to my heart, how wonderfully and fearfully made I truly am.
Yes.
What those words really mean, and the heart of God behind that, what he sees when he looks at us, But it was still choice to choose to accept that and believe it and embrace it and say, okay, God, I agree with you. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Like, I am what you say I am. So often we're like, oh yeah, we'll say the words. Yes. I am righteous, I am whole, I am healed, I'm beloved, but we're not believing them.
Yes.
Because they seem like too amazing, too good to be true.
Yeah.
But the true freedom comes in that agreeing with God and truly and it was like, for me, it was like opening up my heart to, okay, what if this is true? Okay, I'm going to open my heart to actually believe that this could be true. It was all about value and worth. That was the root of everything. And I remember my pastor saying to me, Janelle, do you know what determines the worth or value of something? Right? It's how much somebody's willing to pay for it.
Yes.
You have a yard sale and you put $5 sticker on something, but people are only willing to pay $2. Well, the value is $2. Right? And he said, what was the price God paid for you? Right. The blood of Jesus, the life of his own son. And he said, you need to really get that in your heart. And I knew it in my head, of course, being a Christian for so long, but I didn't know it.
Yeah.
I began to just open my heart to let the Lord just kind of pour in that revelation and make it real. And I finally came to that place where I was like, okay, yes, I'm amazing.
Wow. Yes, you are, girl. Yes, you are. So let's pivot, because I tell you, we could just keep going on, and I could just listen to you all day. And yes, so let's talk about how you help others find their worth, their value, how you help them define their path, because so many folks, particularly these days, are just stuck, and we are we're limited beings, right? So when we don't tap into, a source, the source of our strength, or, how do you define your path?
Yes.
I mean, reason can only take you so much, analytical thoughts or what have you. But let's talk about that. How does that show up in your work and what you do?
Oh, it's what I love to do more than anything in the world. Because I truly believe that each one of us was created divinely with a unique design and a unique purpose. And when we are walking in that, we are fulfilled, we are strong, we are shining our light brilliantly, we are affecting the world around us as we are meant to do. We are all meant to have an impact. And so my whole work is revolving around helping, especially women, but helping people to peel back all those layers that are hiding their light. And I have a process I call the STAR process.
Yes, talk about that.
Yeah. And when it came out of as I was writing my book, I looked back through all my journals. I've been journaling for 30 years, just talking to God and listening and hearing things and writing it down. And looking back through those, I was like, wow, he's done a lot in me. And things that I wrote 30 years ago, I didn't understand what he was saying. And now they're coming true. It was just amazing. And I kind of saw this process for these stages I went through, I guess you could say. And it turned out nicely to fit into this STAR acronym, but it's stirring up your soul is the S. So it's that place of waking up, that place of, coming out of sleepwalking. So many people are just sleepwalking through life, and they're just getting through the week and getting to the weekend and just kind of putting up with things and settling for less and just, working a job they hate or whatever. And that is not living, right? So it's that waking up and and stirring your soul with the questions like, what is going on? What am I doing? What am I meant to do? And ask yourself those questions and begin to search and seek. And, it takes some effort on our part to discover that purpose. I don't think it just appears. Mm-hmm. And I think that's by design. I believe God has us seeking it out, right? Mm-hmm. So that we really get to know who we are, and we really, develop that relationship with him, with the divine, with our source. Mm-hmm. And so the stirring up is the beginning of that, kind of like the wake up and saying yes to you, making that choice to say, yes, I will do this work, internal work that I need to do to be all that I'm called to be, right? So mm-hmm. then the T is tell the truth. And this is the phase where it can, like in my book, I spend a lot of time on this because this is like that, excavation of the soul, some people call it. It's right. That let's go in and see where things started for you. Mm-hmm. Where did you start believing this thing that has you stuck, or what do you say to yourself? What are the words you speak over yourself, and why are you speaking them? It always goes back to something usually in our childhood that started there, because, we didn't know how to process things. So we unpack that, and tell the truth means let's look at what's not true that you've been believing, and let's swap that for what's actually true.
Right.
And so there's a lot to that. Forgiveness is a big part of that. Looking at your past and how it's impacted you, talking about things maybe you've never been able to talk about with somebody that's able to help you. And so then once you started to do that, what naturally starts happening is that you begin to go into the A, which is accept and activate.
Yes.
You begin to accept yourself because you're starting to see the truth. Mm-hmm. And in that, you're looking at yourself maybe for the very first time. Who are you really? What is your personality like? And what are your strengths and those gifts? What makes you you? Have you ever really known that? Or have you just played a role and put on an identity that wasn't you to please other people because you didn't know who you were? In this right. place of seeing yourself maybe for even the first time. And when you really see your true self, you can't help but love yourself because you're brilliant and you're amazing. Yes. And so then that leads into activation because now you want to take action. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Where you were being held back before because of the lies and because of really not loving yourself, not knowing who you are, wanting to please other people. Well, now you're at this place where you're like, who I am, and I want to pursue that dream I've always had and that passion. And you have this confidence that starts to emerge.
Yes.
And so when you're confident, you'll take action. And when you take action, things change. You create the life that you want, the life you were meant to live. Yes. And that leads us into the R, which is full on river. It's the release of a river inside of you. And that came out of I was in church one time and this guy was praying over me, this minister, and he looks me straight in the eye and he goes, "You draw from the river inside, don't you?" Mm-hmm. I was like, wow. Yeah. So I meditated on that and I was just like, that is like, I believe, God is inside of us, but also who we are is like a river.
Exactly.
Right? Rivers move. Mm-hmm. And they change the environment as they flow.
Yes.
And they're always moving and they're strong and they're powerful, but there's a flow to it. And so when you are in that place of really knowing who you are and you've shed all the shame stories and you're stepping into that place where you love the skin you're in.
Yes.
And you start to release who you are out into the world like a river. It's powerful. Yeah. It flows, it changes the environment, and it brings healing and refreshing. And, there's just
all that.
Yeah, all that. That's how I help people, women especially, like to find their path. I start at the beginning and I start like, let's stir some things up. Let's start asking some questions and if they're willing to go, they have to be willing to go.
Yes. I tell you what, Janelle, girl, we're going to have you back. We could just keep talking. absolutely, I mean, so many diamonds and nuggets. And girl, you are truly that phoenix that has risen from the ashes.
Yes. Yes.
And shining bright in all of your glory, your greatness, not anybody else's greatness, and then there's no ego there. It's all about walking out your soul purpose.
Yes.
Oh, bravo, sis. Bravo.
All about, yep.
Yeah. I just love you to death. And I want to thank you for being our spotlight today. I can't keep talking.
I know. I love talking to you too.
Well, we'll definitely have you back. We need to catch up soon. Audience, be sure to follow Janelle on social media. Please tell them, what's the best way to get to you?
I'll probably just go to my website, emerginglifecoaching.com.
Okay.
And on there, they can find out just about anything, really. I have lots of things going on, courses and masterminds and coaching one-on-one. I have a book, just to go there, you'll find me.
Yes. And if you come to one of my events, you'll probably find her there too. Speaking life into my audiences. So folks, you'll be able to also read her full bio, connect to her social media platforms through our Define Your Path podcast platform. And just be sure to reach out because she has a heart of gold and she's a heart-centered person and wants to do good in the world. So thank you again, Janelle, for being here. Bro, I love you. And folks, be sure to visit our virtual home to see what we're up to at definingpaths.online. It's an awful lot. And we hope you'll come and be a part of the family. I'm DocV, the Pivot Maestro, and always your corner woman. Be true to you and define your path. We'll see you on our next episode. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Define Your Path with DocV. To learn how to see with true vision and define your path, visit definingpaths.online/true-vision.